And welcome to World Insight, coming to you live from Beijing on CCTV News. I'm your host, Tian Wei. On today's program, Chinese President Xi Jinping is on a week-long tour to Latin America, ushering in a new era for bilateral ties. What sort of transcontinental cooperation will we see? And as populism takes the lead in the Western world, how will luxury retail stay afloat? Designer Tory Burch shares her thoughts in an exclusive interview. And we begin today's program with President Xi Jinping's tour in Latin America. He's now in Ecuador, and his visit is the first for a Chinese president since the two sides established diplomatic relations back in the year 1980. During the visit, both countries agreed to lift bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. Before we discuss the significance of President Xi's visit to the region, let's take a look at the progress between China and Ecuador.
In this historic visit, the leaders of both Ecuador and China expressed their wishes that it will have positive impacts for many years to come. Chinese President Xi Jinping and his Ecuadorian host and counterpart Rafael Correa watched as their top government officials signed 11 agreements and cooperation treaties in different areas, all aimed at deepening even more the relationship between the two countries. After that, the two presidents gave statements to the media, both reaffirming the importance of the bilateral ties and their commitment to taking them further.
China and Ecuador have traditional areas of cooperation in energy, infrastructure, mineral resources, and finance. And beyond that, we're searching for opportunities in other areas of strategic cooperation.
China is the main financial source worldwide, and its relation with Ecuador serves as reference to other countries in the region. Chinese funding has helped us change the shape of energy generation and the productive structure in our country.
The Ecuadorian president also thanked the Chinese government for its help after the earthquake that hit the country in April. China provided immediate relief assistance, like tents for those who lost their homes, and also is taking part in reconstruction works. The schedule of the Chinese president in Ecuador continues on Friday with a participation in a ceremony in honor of Ecuadorian independence heroes and a visit to the National Assembly. Then, in the afternoon, Xi Jinping will symbolically inaugurate the Coca-Cola Sinclair power plant. It's already running at half capacity, and the beginning of its full operation was timed to coincide with the visit of the Chinese president, as this plant is seen as an important example of the cooperation between China and Ecuador. After the inauguration of the plant, the Chinese president will travel to Peru, where he will take part in the meeting of APEC leaders in the capital, Lima, over the weekend. And then next week, Xi Jinping will travel to Chile for the third and last stage of this Latin American tour. Paulo Cabral, CCTV, Quito.
To discuss the significance of President Xi Jinping's visit to Latin America, we're having in our Beijing studio Mr. Jiang Jianping, who is the Director General of the Center for Regional Cooperation at the Chinese Academy of International Trade and Economic Cooperation. Welcome, sir. Joining us from Rio de Janeiro, we are having Mr. Charles Tang, President of Brazil-China Commerce and Industry. In Peru, Lima, we are joined by Mr. Eric Farnsworth, Vice President of the American Society and Council of the Americas. And finally, in Washington, D.C., the U.S., Maricus McGowan, Vice President of the National Economists Club. Welcome to the four of you. This is a very strong panel, a lot of insights into Latin America. May I begin with you, Mr. Zhang, here in Beijing. Chinese President Xi Jinping now in Ecuador, on his way to Peru. He's been talking about strategic partnership with Ecuador. This is only one of those countries in Latin America China is working closely with. So how should we understand China's overall approach at this stage to Latin American countries?
You know that in the past, actually, China and Latin America, we are the old friend. At that time, Asia, Latin America, Africa, all of those countries, they said that we are friends. But today, China-America becomes a strategic partnership. That's because even if there is a long distance between China and Latin America, but if you look at our economic ties becomes closer and closer.
Right.
Also, you can find that in the global governance, actually, as a developing economies, both China and the Latin America countries, we have our common interests in. So, especially in recent years, trade investment and other corporations, becomes more and more.
So we want to share a number with our audience over there. China is now Latin America's second largest trading partner and also the third largest source of investment, while Latin America is China's seventh largest trading partner. So there's a lot of ties being established over there. In Peru, right now, for us, we have Mr. Farnsworth coming from the U.S. originally. So when you're there, sir, do you feel the excitement that the Latin American countries have about the Chinese president's visit to that region? What do they expect to establish, and how would they compare their relations with China, if we can, their relations with their neighbor, the United States, for example, where you're originally from?
Well, thank you for having me on again. It's a great joy to be with you. And I would agree with you that the presence shortly of Xi Jinping to Lima is very, very anticipated by not just the Peruvians, but by many Latin Americans. The commitment that China has shown to Latin America, I think, is very strong over the last several years, and it seems to be sustained and indeed growing. So I agree with your assessment that it is a very strong and growing relationship. In terms of the relationship with the United States, I think Latin Americans don't necessarily say one or the other, they say both. I think there's room for a lot of investment in Latin America, there's room for a lot of cooperation, and Latin Americans at some level want to gain the best from both China and from the United States. So I think there's potentially a growing partnership there. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves over time.
That's probably, we can go to Mr. Tang in Brazil for us. Mr. Tang, what do you make of Mr. Farnsworth's assessment? Meanwhile, we understand there has been somewhat tension between the United States and Latin American neighbors as a result of President-elect Donald Trump's recent rhetorical campaign, even though we do not know the policy yet. So what do you think at this moment, Latin America's approach to the United States and its understanding of relations nature with China?
Well, China has developed a very, very strong partnership with most of the countries of Latin America and Caribbean. So much so that, as in my last article, I said that America's backyard is really growing a very robust Chinese garden. And with the election of President-elect Mr. Donald Trump, and where he vows to scrap the TPP, the only game left in town will be the RCEP and the
FTAAP,
Free Trade Area of Asia Pacific, which will be the only game in town. And I think that China will have a very, very significant leading role in this FTAAP. And President Xi Jinping's presence in Peru, of course, will ensure that China will play a major role. And I agree with Eric, whereby most Latin American countries need China because China is the one who's investing and creating and developing new relationships and alliances of mutual interest.
All right.
But most countries don't necessarily discard the United States.
Of course not. That's not smart, right? You need to have all kinds of ties as much as possible to develop your economy. And Ms. McGowan, your assessment here, I mean, this time TTP seemed to be dead, at least a phrase like TPP seemed to be dead. The content could still be alive in one sort or the other. But then what would be the platform in which the United States could include many of its Latin American countries and neighbors? And meanwhile, will APEC, this platform, will FTAAP, RCEP be the possibility platform for Latin American countries? Ms. McGowan.
I think there are many good news here. First, I think China should take advantage of the high levels from Latin American countries on the Chinese government, Chinese businessmen, and investment. I think that will benefit both areas. And the TPP, I think Mr. President-elect Trump has been a little bit misunderstood and is being shown as a protectionist. I don't think that's what he really meant. He meant of engaging in smart trade agreements. He never said we are not going to get into agreements anymore. I agree with the TPP. I don't think it's going to happen. However, I think the United States is going to continue having trade deals with China and with Latin America. And Latin America will benefit greatly, but there's one thing that Latin America needs to do that hasn't been done in decades. Right. They keep exporting primarily goods that are primary goods, the no value added, and they need to work harder in doing that. And the second thing that they need to work harder is in the image, their image that there are high levels of corruption. People don't want to invest, China included, in regions that are known for having high level of corruption. And we can see the example of Uruguay, for example. Uruguay is being seen of no corruption or very low levels of corruption. And there are great foreign investments in Uruguay, and they are doing very well. The rest of the other Latin American countries should follow that example.
Mr. Zhang, does China have a preference in terms of which country to invest in? How much would the social and political issues considered by Ms. McGowan in the Washington, D.C. be of concern to China?
So your point is, sorry?
The point is, does China agree with what some of the other countries have accused Latin American countries, the governments, of corruption? And is that a big concern for Chinese investment?
Yeah, of course, you know that now China's investment in Latin American countries is very important for their economic development, especially those that suffering from financial support. And meanwhile, this type of huge investments also can between China and the Latin American countries. Of course, Latin American countries as developing economies, of course, some of corruption phenomena happened, but
in developing economies also, by the way.
So I think that actually many developing economies, all of them have the same phenomenon. So I think this type of things need to be regulated by their domestic rules and regulations.
Having said that, let me ask you a further question about what we earlier discussed. These different kinds of trade mechanisms, TPP off now from the shelf, not necessarily going to happen. Then what is likely to be the platform? Is it going to be APEC, which the Chinese President Xi Jinping is going? Or is it going to be some of the other mechanisms, FTA, AP, RCEP, as Mr. Tang just earlier recommended? Or some of the new platforms that China and Latin American countries can invent together, invent and invest together?
Actually, in short term, TPP maybe will be dead, but I don't think TPP will dead forever, because maybe TPP will have a long, complicated story. But for RCEP, I think that's belonging to 16 countries in East Asia region, and the Latin American countries didn't involve in that mega FTA. Given that in 2014. Actually 21 members of APEC economies, actually
including 3 of the Latin American countries, Mexico, Peru, and there's another one.
Chile, Peru, Mexican actually belonging to members. And all of members agree that by 2025, there will be FTA AP. We will go forward to that goal. So that means I think that RCEP, at this stage, many people expected that RCEP can make consensus. Also, those RCEP members agreed that by the end of this year, there will be a basic agreement.
I see. So there is hope for RCEP.
Yeah, hope. In the future, I think that RCEP can play a role. Meanwhile, those bilateral free trade agreement, including bilateral free trade agreement between China and Chile, China, Peru, all of them will support.
I have to follow up a little bit, Mr. Zhang, because I understand you personally involved in the feasibility report about having this bilateral agreement between China and Chile, China, and also Peru, bilateral trade agreement. Tell me, what is China looking at specifically when bilateral platforms is being established? What is China really looking at? And how will that really benefit the local people?
Yeah.
This is a deglobalization state that we're talking about.
Yeah.
At least there's some words about that. So how is it likely to really benefit the people there?
Yeah.
Briefly, if you can, sir.
Yeah, actually, those two bilateral free trade agreements happened 10 years ago. At that time, both two countries actually, we realized that this bilateral free trade agreement will produce trade and investment creation, will create so a lot of job opportunities for two countries' people, as well as they can make their economic growth. Actually, we already benefit from that process.
Okay, Mr. Tang, over there in Brazil, not only these trade mechanisms, but also AIIB, Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, that is likely to be another platform in which China can cooperate with Latin American countries. Some of them have already becoming observing countries, in fact, on its way to be the member.
Yeah, I think that the Chinese approach to the whole world, and not only Latin America, has been very welcome because China is investing and trading and creating and building very necessary infrastructure to help develop the countries. Very much the same way China did in Africa. And Chinese engagement is a very welcome and viewed as a positive engagement. And although Brazil has suffered a big corruption scandal, and most of the guilty leaders, political and business people, are in jail, China has been investing massively into Brazil. And this will certainly help Brazil lift itself out of its economic recession, and which is really what China is doing all over the world in helping these countries. Like the Road and Bridge Initiative will help 60 countries along the way and elsewhere to develop. And so it's very, very positive.
Not only these multilateral agreements and platforms, but also some of the other mechanisms that China has not yet had the opportunity to tap in, and so hasn't the United States. Mr. Farnsworth, for example, Mercosur, which is an organization between Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, these are also trade platforms. How much thoughts do you think Washington should have about working on these platforms with the local people? How much does China and the United States, two biggest trading countries in the world, be able to tap into those possibilities?
Well, I think there's a great potential. Mercosur is an agreement which some would say needs to be reformed, both in terms of the partners. Venezuela is a member of Mercosur and is having some real troubles, as you know. But also Mercosur itself is more of an agreement to try to promote trade among the 4 or the 5 parties in it, rather than open to the rest of the world. And so there are probably some reforms that needed to take place there. But I think the broader point is one that's very important to make, which is to say we don't know what's going to happen. The best trade is the most efficient trade, which is trade that takes place among the most parties and is at the highest standard of level. So the WTO ultimately would be the best platform to utilize, but that doesn't seem to be a possibility right now. There is a lot of things going on in the Western Hemisphere, just as you've outlined. China's a part of that. The United States may or may not go forward with the TPP, etc. So we'll have to work that out. But I think we can't discount also the need for continued reform in Latin America itself.
Sure.
We have new governments in Brazil and Argentina. We have a newly elected president here in Peru, very pro-market, very welcome to foreign investment and to cooperation externally. And I think that's a very positive sign. So whether or not there's a formal trade agreement with one or more of these countries, I think we can understand that trade and investment nonetheless will continue forward continue being an issue that brings our regions together, and I think that's a very positive thing.
It is a positive thing. We've also seen some positive signs of it from the Chinese side. President Xi's, this is already the third visit for him to Latin America, for him alone, since he took office in the year 2012. And also bilateral ties have developed rapidly over the past few years. Take a look at the numbers we have over there. 2013, he visited Trinidad and Tobago, Costa Rica, Mexico, pointing out that it was the period of opportunity for bilateral ties. 2014 to Brazil, President Xi once again to Argentina, Venezuela, and Cuba, where he pushed a comprehensive partnership between China and Latin America. This year to Ecuador, Peru, likely Chile later during his visit. Ms. McGowan, we've been talking many times about the changes going on between the United States and Cuba, but with a new president coming into the office, it seems that some of the earlier legacy is going to be written in a very different form. So, how much is really, do you think, this new administration ready to approach Latin America? How much opportunity can countries like China and other Asia-Pacific countries be able to, with the United States, cooperate on the Latin America issues, particular trade?
Well, I think, again, I think China has a great opportunity. When President of China Xi Jinping went to the last time in 2014, you had in Brazil, Argentina, Cuba, you had left-wing governments. Now these governments are right-wing, market-based. They are going to be considering trade with the United States too. That doesn't mean they are not going to stop trading with China. As I said, the level of trust is very high. Also, the problem with Mercosur, everybody knows, is Venezuela, and I am a believer that if there is a country that can help Venezuela getting out of the funk that they are there, it's China. I think a little bit more of trust, high risk, I understand, from the part of China, but that could help Venezuela getting out of where they are in the terrible economic situation and political situation that they are.
Right.
And they could also benefit in many, many ways.
Okay, let me come to you finally, Mr. Zhang. The country like Cuba, Venezuela are unique in their own ways.
Yeah.
How is China likely to approach these countries? These are certainly not on Mr. President's visit this time, but certainly he made his stop earlier.
Yeah.
Secondly, you see China willing to do some of the wonderful projects in some of the countries, like the one between Brazil and Peru, Interoceanic Railway.
Yeah.
How much chance does China have in working on these projects?
Yeah. The first thing is that now between China and the Latin American countries, we have our China-Latin America Forum. Actually, we already formulated our institutional cooperation platform on which every Latin American countries will be appreciated. Also, every country will be our friend. We need to promote our trade, investment, cooperation, financial cooperation.
You made that point very clearly already, sir. So finally, what about those projects?
Yeah, project is very huge engineering projects, and also there are so many difficulties. But you know that from Chinese side, we have our full chain supply capacity for infrastructure projects. We already get success story both in China and the other countries. So I do believe that China will have opportunities in Latin American countries.
We'll see whether those infrastructure projects will be going on. And we also understand President-elect from the United States also talking about infrastructure building in his country. We'll see where things are going. Thank you so much for the four of you to discuss the latest situation in Latin America and many of the important ties involving the region. Zhang Jianping, Charles Tang, Eric Farnsworth, Mary Cruz McGowan, really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great weekend, the four of you. You're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei, still to come on our program. Will women ever smash the glass ceiling? Tory Burch shares how female entrepreneurs like her are empowering other women to strike it out on their own. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight coming to you live from Monday to Friday every day on CCTV News. The luxury goods industry has grown from a small market of a connoisseur to a massive one, tripling its turnover in 20 years. But some of the brands have hit several bumps on the road to global expansion. So many are coming up with new ways to reach their customers, and e-commerce is certainly one of them.
Beautiful, trendy, elegant. Keeping up with appearances created the emergence of luxury. Western designers take the stage during fashion weeks to showcase their glitzy designs. But global sales are not doing as well as in the past. In Shanghai, the Bund is one of the city's most recognizable streets, with the most iconic view. It was also the first stop for many foreign luxury brands to establish themselves in China. But that trend is changing. Many have abandoned their brick-and-mortar stores. For most luxury brands, a speedier entry into China is through e-commerce.
If I want to buy classic models, I will buy them online because it's an official channel, but I would want them to guarantee an after-sales service.
If the price online is lower than offline, I would probably buy luxury goods online. Even if they were the same price, I might consider buying online just for the convenience.
These days, an increasing number of luxury brands are showing up somewhere uncharted, new media. Accounts on platforms like WeChat contain information about the brand's latest products, their culture, and sometimes even services like personal tailoring. The revolution of luxury has begun, but at this point, it's still hard to say if this works out to be sustainable in the long run.
That's what's going on with the luxury brands recently. The fashion industry has carved out many successful female entrepreneurs and business leaders. And as their careers develop, they're using their voices to inspire and help other women pursue a better life. I spoke earlier to founder and CEO of American fashion label Tory Burch, who shared with us her views on some of the hottest issues in the U.S. We've seen some political trends of deglobalization these days. What does that mean for the fashion industry?
I look at the fashion industry as I look at our company, that from the beginning we've wanted a global lifestyle brand. We think about the world as a smaller place, and I think particularly with the internet and everyone has so much access and so much information that it's important to think that way. Different markets are more relevant for us than others. That said, we want to build the brand globally in a way that it feels good, and our China business resembles what we're doing in the United States. When it gets too segmented, that's when I think it's a problem. This whole concept of omni-channel is important, and particularly with e-commerce. I mean, e-commerce will be interesting to see for a brand like ours or a luxury brand how it unfolds. I think it will, but it will take some time.
You have decided to give your employee a presidential election day voting break, as you said. Give them the time to go and cast their solemn vote. Why is that?
Well, I think if you look at Europe, voting is on a Sunday. When you look at the States and different places, Australia, it's compulsory. There's certain things that happened and decisions were made based on a different time in history. It was based on the agriculture trade is when they picked a Tuesday. Right. So it was never updated, and I really believe that having 52% of America vote in an election is dangerous. And I think that if people want to have a voice in our future, they need to step up and vote. And a question that I thought would be an interesting thing to pose is, are you a voter?
What about the other fashion designers who follow your examples or practice?
I think it's exciting. I mean, I wrote my first op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, and it seems, you know, I didn't know how people would take it or not. We've had great traction, whether it's Fortune 500 companies, startups, other fashion brands. I mean, for us to make a difference would be a great thing. I don't think it's telling them to vote one way or another. I think it's really just giving them some ideas on how to do it. It's complicated when you have retail.
Are you afraid that people will say, Tory Burch, she's political?
No, I'm not. I hope they would say...
Why not? Everybody's afraid. It seems, for example, those in the Hollywood, they're afraid people are putting a brand on their forehead saying, he or she is political?
I think it's all in the way you message things. And I think if you don't stand up for things in life, what's the point? If you don't stand up for women's issues, when you really deeply believe in it, then I wouldn't feel good about myself. I have a voice. I want to inspire others to have a voice too. I'm not telling them what to say.
Should women only vote for women?
No, of course not. I think you should vote for the best person for that role. But I think women should have equal opportunity to be able to be considered for that role.
You have always been very active, even politically. But the question is, as a business person these days who are doing global business around the world, you travel around, you hear people's voices. Do politics these days still help?
If I said no, I would be a pessimist. So for me, I have to be optimistic enough.
Why do you have to be optimistic?
and certainly, I think we need to fix it, and I think there's a long way to go. But I'm not saying it can't be done. I think it can be done.
Very interesting. Talking about the content, what are the issues that make you the most passionate?
Well, human rights. I think. There's a race problem in the United States and elsewhere, and an acceptance of all people, regardless of gender, religion, race. I deeply believe in equal rights for all people. So there's certain things that I think are part of humanity, and it's a human right. It's not. It should be a given.
As a business leader and as someone who is passionate about politics, what do you think, Tory, if I could ask you from a personal perspective, what kind of America you want? And what kind of role your country, the United States, should and could play?
Well, I think America is great. And I will say any state or country can be better. And certainly there's parts of our history that are not great. I like to learn from our mistakes. If I could wish for anything, I wish people would acknowledge mistakes, learn from them, and strive to do better.
Do you have these kind of conversations with your fashion circle friends?
I would say yes and no. I have a very diverse group of friends, and it's not like I'm as political as you're saying. I care about issues, and I think that in order for anyone to create change, you have to have a belief, and then you have to do something about it.
Since the establishment of the Tory Burch Foundation, many women have started their own businesses with access to low-cost capital, education, and mentorship provided by the foundation. During my interview, Tory Burch also shared with us her own experiences of setting up businesses and some of the mistakes she made along the way. Tory, let's talk about women and business. You started as an entrepreneur yourself, a small boutique, and now maybe even a few billion. What do you make of your growth? How much would that be inspiration for other women? Are we, of course, living in a very different time? So will entrepreneurship still work?
Yes, I think entrepreneurship, well, America is the perfect example of entrepreneurship, and I think one of the things I'm passionate about is going around the world and working with communities to understand that as well. I don't do it enough yet, but in the future I would love to do more of that. Entrepreneurship is one of the of what we should all be proud of. If you think about great businesses, they were all started somewhere, and so it exists everywhere. And I think that it's a different time. People can look at me as an impossible thing that happened. I never imagined I could do what I'm doing, and it should give people hope. When you ask me, or if someone were to ask me 14 years ago what I would be doing today, I could tell you I would have had no idea.
And you have been very active in encouraging female entrepreneurs. I understand back in the year 2014, during Obama administration's newly coming into the office for the second term, you were being inaugurated as the member of the Presidential Ambassador for Entrepreneurs. What kinds of difficulties do you think the newer generation of entrepreneurs are facing these days compared to your time?
Well, I think any time is hard. Business is hard, a startup is hard, but I think if you find your passion, that's the first step. Access to capital is difficult. For women, it's a proven fact. Women have a harder time getting access to capital. There's a lot that can be done to improve that, and certainly our foundation, that is our goal, is to be the go-to source for women to get access to low-cost capital, to get mentoring and education, and then also to learn about different issues in business on our website. It's torybirchfoundation.org, and I think there's a lot of information that can help people. If we could set up a community that teaches women how to mentor each other, peer-to-peer mentorship, it would be a wonderful thing.
Some of the entrepreneurs who told me, particularly philanthropists, that they thought at the very beginning was about giving out money, giving the wealth away and support people for their better cause. But later they found there's a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
To make sure the money will be given to the right people, for the right projects, at the right time, for the right cost.
Yes.
So, what does that mean to you?
It sounds very familiar. I think our partnership with Bank of America, one of the challenges was that they said we could give $20 million out in the first 2 years, and we thought, wow, that's easy. And really what we learned is that we did have to find the right women in the right cycle of their business at the right time.
How did you find?
A lot of work.
Do your research?
Well, working.
Give me some examples.
Well, we work with local community lenders, CDFIs, and it's a lot of vetting, a lot of work that my team did and Bank of America's team, and really finding businesses that have validity, businesses that could scale, businesses that had a trajectory that could really use the loan. Women pay back their loans. That's a great thing.
They do.
So I think it was vetting. We have given out over $22 million in the last 2 years, and we're averaging over $1 million a month. So,
are there some fresh examples you're best impressed with?
Well, we just had our fellowship program. The winner is a woman that started a chocolate factory because her mom was sick and her mom had taught her to make chocolate bars, and she was out of Maine. It turns out that she had a great company, a great idea. The whole state of Maine got behind her. Bixby Bars is its name. Then there's a woman who actually consults on getting diversity into companies. There's so many different kinds of companies. The one thing that is very similar, they're all inspiring. These women are talented, they're smart, and they are often holding down 2 jobs, single mothers, and they're getting it done.
Do women really support women?
I do. I have a deep feeling that women do support women.
I remember there was a saying by the former secretary.
By Milan Verveer, or was it Hillary Clinton?
I think it was in her administration. Yeah. She said there's a special place in hell in which women don't support women.
Yes. It's a great saying.
I hope that part of hell is not very big.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure, hopefully we won't find out about that.
We wouldn't, with what you have been doing. You started with a small boutique. Your business grows, as we mentioned earlier. You also did a restructuring, large scale, recently, and that made your company grow even faster. And you have a sports line now. Congrats. These are all successful decisions. But do you sometimes feeling a little bit nervous about your earlier decision? And also being a little bit nervous when all the others have become public company. They have got big cash. And can you really, for the future, compete with them if you're still private?
So it doesn't drive me to think about competing with big businesses. It drives me to create a really profitable, wonderful business that we're proud of. Do things keep me up at night all the time? I mean, I would say yes. But I think I'm pretty decisive. I try not to look back. Have I made mistakes? Of course. I've made many. I think that the important thing is to learn from them and really try not to repeat them.
What is the biggest one you have done?
When I keep people in the wrong positions, and I realize that a loyalty is actually disloyal to the whole company. You know, when I'm trying to do the right thing for someone, it affects everyone around me. It'd be very harmful. So it's hard. It's hard to make changes with people and restructure a company. It was a very difficult decision, but it was essential. And it was actually I was thinking about it before I saw the macro environment changing, and I knew that I had a Herculean event ahead. And so that's daunting, but I knew that it had to be done.
I'm not a fashion insider, but when I, as an outsider, look at the latest fashion trends, it seems to me brands are nervous. The biggest brands, I mean. They want to be viewed as so-called updated. They want to be viewed as trendy, quote unquote. And sometimes, to me, it seems they have lost some of their previous personalities. Any advice to us and to yourself?
And to myself.
Yes.
I think to jump on that nervous wagon is a mistake. That said, you will be nervous, but to just generate things,
change it for change
it, try to be something you're not because something's working in the market, looking at last year's sales and trying to replicate that for next year, it doesn't work, and we've been there and we've done it ourselves. So I've learned from experience. We don't want to be just big for big's sake. We want to have the right growth. We want to be relevant, of course, but we're not just thinking about trend. I like the idea of women wearing our pieces for years. So for me, it's about product and our customer and just designing the best possible product and really believing in it. I talk to our team about buying less and believing in it more.
Very interesting, a slogan over there. Thank you so much,
Thank
Tory,
you.
for being with us. All
Thank
the
you.
best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the
Really
best to
appreciate
you.
it. Tory Burch, a fashion icon, talking about women's role in the business world and female entrepreneurship, as well as gender equity these days in American politics. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, you can visit our website. Just type World Insight CCTV News into your search engine or check out our YouTube channel. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching, and tune in again next week for more insights from across China and around the world. Good night and have a great weekend.